Hi, this is Brand Klug with AnandTech, and what we have in front of us are two HTC Surrounds, one of them running the Mango update which just came out, and the other one running the build of Windows Phone 7 that was released before it. So what we're going to do is just go through the OS and see what all has changed and what remains the same, and hopefully give you an impression about what remains for Windows Phone 7 and what's new and some of the big changes. So I don't think there's anything here that's a dead giveaway about which one is running Windows Phone 7 Mango. Of course, the phone on the right has a SIM inside of it because I've been using it all day, and I suppose that does give it away. But right here inside Theme, you can see that they kind of renamed the orange color Mango, which is kind of cute. So obviously pretty much all the colors and themes remain the same, but if you pick up a phone and you don't know the build number, you can find out that way. Of course, down and about, you can see that yes, we are indeed running Mango. The phone on the left is running build 7392. The phone on the right is running 7720, which is of course Mango. So if we go through the settings list here, which is sort of just where we started, we can see really what all is different pretty quickly. And luckily we have two HTC Surrounds that we've had lying around. So I already unchecked the box, but pretty much the only thing that's changed in the ringtones and sounds menu is the addition of the camera shutter checkbox. So you can turn off the camera shutter sound, which is sort of just like a horrendous sound that every phone makes, and sort of emulates an SLR. And then you can take creepy pictures of people without them noticing. And then if you come inside, Wi-Fi is the next major change. So of course on the previous build of Windows Phone 7, you could not connect to an access point that didn't broadcast its SSID. So just purely by virtue of you only being able to select from ones in the list. So of course now there's an advanced tab where you can both modify existing networks and then add networks that don't broadcast their SSID. Of course there's an interesting line here about that if you add hidden networks you may use more battery power. And you can only add 3, so that's kind of interesting. So probably the reason is that it's going to pull occasionally and then hop on. So then if we scroll down, email and accounts, you can see my live ID. And then of course on Mango we have Twitter, which is integrated into the OS in a different way. So before there was no Twitter integration, which was a little bit funny because it was integrated into the much maligned Kin. But now we can have Twitter. So you can add that and it will show up in the People tab and some other places that we'll show later. But this remains pretty much the same. You can also link accounts and do other things. In Lock and Wallpaper, you can see there's some changes here. You can now show the artist while playing music, and then there's also more timeout options. So there's now sort of this menu, whereas previously it was a menu like that, and you also get 30 minutes and 15 minutes. I don't know why I have 15 minutes selected. Of course, never is a blessing if you're trying to do tests like we do. Otherwise, you have to sit there and tap it or use a USB drive. Location remains the same. If I tapped on it already, but you can see the other big change on Mango is addition of this battery saver menu. So sort of like every other phone, or at least a majority of phones on Android, there's sort of a battery stretch or battery saver function, which when your battery gets low will disable background sync. It also says that apps won't run in the background, and you can pull for email manually, but basically all this does is turn off sort of background data and give you a little bit longer. So you get two options: turn it on when the battery is low, or save it until the next charge. And then down here is some really useful information. So previously you had to rely on this visualization of the battery, which is sort of discretized and as many steps as there are pixels in the icon. But of course what everybody really wants is the percentage or voltage, and thankfully now that's here. So you can see I've been using it for a while. We're down to 63%, and at current estimated time remaining is 1 day, which is kind of cool. So you can see that we get sort of an estimation of how much battery time there is left, how long it's been since I've charged, and then when I turn this on, of course it says I get 4 more hours. So I'm not entirely sure whether that will get better, the estimation, as you use it longer, but that's another new feature. I don't believe anything is different in brightness. This is pretty much the same. Yeah, this is the same. If you come down into keyboard, there are some differences here. So I get sort of many more checkboxes, and there's also this menu. I'm not entirely sure what all is different here. I have to go through all of it, but the keyboard appears to be the same in the situations that I've used it. least offer the same performance, which is really great. So if we come down inside speech, let's see whether there's anything new. So obviously this gets a little bit of a revamp here. You have speech recognition that takes place over the network. We can also turn off audio confirmations and do the incoming text messages over Bluetooth. What else is there? I believe feedback is still the same as well, and I already showed about. So now if we go back to the home screen, you can see that basically this is sort of the same. I can still tap up at the top to get the current status. And then the phone on the right, I just reset completely. I didn't bother doing any updates, and as a result, this is sort of the stock tile layout. So you can see that they've added sort of a white space, and it shows up down here too. You also get white spaces. So I don't know if that's done to make things friendly or sort of more inviting, but it's a change. Of course, you also have the search button here. So if you have a huge unwieldy list of things, you can just quickly search for it. So that's something that sort of brings them up to parity with both iOS and Android, where you can search and quickly get to a list of applications. This is sort of the same. Nothing has changed here with navigation other than the addition of that search button. I believe that also you can have a long list pop up with letters when you're over 50 apps, but I haven't tried that yet. What else is there to show? So one of the new tiles down here is Local Scout, and that's sort of a new thing. Of course, you can also see that it's pulled in my Twitter avatar, so you can see this is the last status that I had. More notifications about what happened on Twitter, what's new. So you can see how this is integrated. It says Windows Live and Twitter. So basically it's pulling in data from those two services, and that's kind of how Twitter is integrated. Of course, you go into People, that's really where you can see it. Like you can sort of see the latest tweets. Of course, the All tab, stuff like this is sort of the same way. This one appears to have not updated my Facebook in a long time. So what else is there to show? Well, of course, multitasking is the big next thing. So if I hold down the back button just like that, I get a list of applications. And this is sort of like what's happened last. So obviously if I tap on one, then it will show up, and bring it to dominant view. And then of course, it becomes the first tile in this list, and then you can't really rearrange them. So of course, previously the back button just took you back. It doesn't really do anything, but so that's a big new thing. And then if you have more tiles open, so if we open up a bunch of tiles in here, tabs, then you can see these will also show up. So you can see here I have a bunch of tabs open already, but the result is that not all of them show up in this list. So this is sort of what applications are currently running. So of course things get suspended in the background, and it happens sort of silently. So really you can only rely on this to go to like the last couple immediate applications that you were using, or the last couple browser tabs that you were using. And of course what's in here isn't really a live view. So if I scroll up and then come out, and then go to another one, sometimes it'll lose the page, or not be fully rendered. But it's a step in the right direction, and you can go back and forth. But the result is that this is still sort of a unitasking paradigm, just like all the other smartphone OSs, where you can sort of change context, and things are running in the background, but they aren't really, interactive, I suppose. So now let's talk about the other big changes, of course, which of course is the browser. So you can see on the left, this is the old browser. URL bar at the top. Let's see if I can type. And we're connected to the same wireless network. And I don't think it really bears going over just how slow the old Windows Phone 7 browser is, because it's very slow. And I'd encourage you to check out the review to see synthetics and that sort of thing. And I guess we can just do it. Let's just load a page. So of course now the major thing that's different is that the URL bar is at the bottom, which gives you more real estate, and the menu is at the bottom as well. So it's sort of a consolidated view. You still have the same, functionality. You can have more tabs, favorites. Inside settings, you still thankfully have the ability to change your user agent to the desktop, which is something I would make everybody do. So let's delete everything and get the caches about the same. So I believe, yeah, that does clear caches and cookies. So let's go back now and load the OCZ Revo drive, the OCZ Drive R4, Z Drive R4 story. So 1, 2, 3, tap those about the same time. You can see the Mango pretty much rocketed ahead there, and it's essentially already done. I don't know what else it's loading, but you can interact with this, and it still pans really smoothly. It still is, about the same performance. Obviously, if you scroll outside the backing store, then you still do get a white screen, which is a little bit frustrating. But it's much faster than the old browser. And not even just in, page rendering performance, but also JavaScript, and then HTML5 compliance is much better. So if you zoom in here, you can see that sort of takes a while to re-render the characters there, which was something that a lot of people complained about. And it sort of got annoying after a while. You can see that obviously, it's much faster on this one. It sort of all pops in, boom, there it is. If you do it here, you can see that obviously it's sort of like a bitmap font. And there it takes a while. And that's something else that I noticed was always, oh great, something kind of different with the old version of Windows Phone 7 is that it seemed to have a very limited set of fonts for sort of the web browser. You had like the serif and sans serif fonts, which are sort of token, you need to have those to meet the CSS styles, but it didn't really have all the fonts that you need to actually, render a page the same as the desktop. And that feels a lot different now. Things are much better. So let's load another story, and let's see how that does. And then we'll go load something else. The browser now completes the acid tests. It doesn't completely pass, but it's so much better than before. Let's just do that after this loads. All right. Give it one second. Now we're on the ACID 2 test page, and of course, Microsoft has stated several times before that they don't really believe in building a browser to test, and there's something to that, but it's a good way of gauging performance on camera, sort of a quick and dirty test. So if we look at the ACID 2 test, I loaded up on both. Let's tap take the test. You can obviously see that there's a huge improvement, just from going away from the previous version of Windows Phone's browser, which I believe is Trident based, to the IE9 based browser in Mango. So if we go back, and of course it still doesn't quite pass, but it's so much better that they really deserve a lot of credit. So if we load the ACID 3 test, you can sort of see that things are kind of a disaster on the old Windows Phone. And things here don't entirely pass, strictly speaking, because of the rendering errors at the top right. But all the colors show up and the test runs smoothly all the way to 100, except for a little bit of hesitation at the beginning. So, that's a really good score, all things considered, especially considering that, even Android's browser doesn't complete this test, and with all the boxes colored. So, and that's a big deduction if you actually go read the score. So let's try something else, the HTML5 test. Give me a second. Oh, so obviously you can tell that the keyboard, it does have a difference here, and the difference is that it's now themed to match the OS. So obviously I set the color to white, and with the Mango color, and the keyboard is white, so that works. So let's go load this. So look, the HTML5 test basically just uses some JavaScript to look at HTML5 elements that are sort of rendered in a page off screen, and basically before it was kind of a really bad score on the old Windows Phone. So you can see that it's basically stopped at 25 and no bonus points, whereas the new one is 141 and 5 bonus points. So if you scroll through the list here, you can see that sort of nothing was implemented before. Now we have canvas, you have some video element tags, it does support H.264, it supports built-in audio, it supports embedding, some of the fancy form things, it supports checkbox image. Nobody really does have good form support on the mobile side. Of course, I don't believe that's totally finalized yet. User interaction was there before, web applications, geolocation. I don't believe, oh, they do have storage. I don't believe they had storage before. So, I mean, they sort of implement the basic things you need to implement. Of course, you know, the font theming is missing, as you can tell, because the number isn't themed. But this is so much better that they deserve a lot of credit. And for the most part, the browser is the single biggest thing that I would point to and say this is way improved in Mango, and significantly impacts, you know, the usability of the OS entire as a whole platform. So of course, you know, copy paste is a little bit different too. You know, they've rounded out the button. It used to be square. One other change that I noticed too is the volume buttons here. So you can see when I press volume there, I used to get sort of like a slider here, and now you get like a number that's a fraction. So that's kind of cool. You know, ring and vibrate, ring, that sort of stuff remains the same. So now, of course, one of the other big changes is the addition of threaded email view. So I'm not going to bother showing it on the old one, but basically almost all of the email view here is the same. The difference is that if you tap on a conversation, now you get the messages, and you can sort of go inside, you know, and see the details, you know, like expand this one out, and you can see that it's part of a coherent conversation. So that's something new, and it's good to see. Of course, you can change the settings, you know, there is email grouping. I forward all my email to one specific place, and then from there I deal with it. So I don't necessarily want to check a ton of email accounts on the phone, because that's just an avenue that leads to more battery use, basically. So I haven't had a chance to test that out, but it's there, and that's one thing to talk about. The other thing is visual voicemail. Unfortunately, the SIM that I have in here doesn't support visual voicemail, but you can see that, you know, obviously there's an additional tab for search, and, you know, back here, if I did have visual voicemail working, it would show, you know, my last voicemails. The dialer remains the same. You know, this is nothing new. You can obviously search for contacts, so, you know, I can type myself in. Oops. So apparently it hasn't brought down my contacts yet, but you know, that's something that it will do. There we go. So now let's talk about camera, which is another big thing that's changed. And, you know, when I say big, I really mean additional features and changes that were, you know, things that we both addressed in our initial review and that other people talked about. So previously in the camera application, there was kind of a glaring problem, and that problem was that if you made a settings change and then you came back later, it wasn't saved. So as a result, each time you launched the camera application, you essentially got the defaults. So now if you expand settings here, and this is hard to see because it's black, so it doesn't really match the rest of the UI still. But I can see the argument for making the camera application black. You can see that I can save settings, I can restore the default settings, which I just did, and then there's obviously underneath it the actual settings for the camera. So if I come and turn flash off, you know, and I exit the camera application, and then I can just get to it by holding the button down. Then I come back in here, the flash is still off. So that's probably like the single most annoying use case from the previous version, was that just wasn't possible at all. And, you know, similarly here, you know, if you want to shoot in 720p, you know, which I would recommend shooting in the highest resolution your expensive camera phone can do. Now I can come back, and sure enough, it's still... So obviously it doesn't bring you back into the last mode that you used, but... oh, apparently camcorder doesn't save. So, you know, some of these things aren't exactly perfect. If I come back, let's see if this works. Ah, so it did work that time. Or no, it didn't. Well, that's interesting. But you get the point. Now there is some functionality. I guess I could save these settings, and then hopefully when I come back, they're still saved. The other big thing is that if I come in here, I can do some auto fix functionality. So, you know, they added sort of like a quick fix thing that will, I guess, just look at the histogram and make a change based on that. So, you know, I can sort of like see before, after. I kind of like before. There's a little bit more contrast. But, you know, if this appeals to you and you like doing, you know, auto on all your photos, then now you can do it, and it's OS level. You don't have to go buy some app and, you know, trust that developer to do it. So that's pretty much the big things that are changed here in Mango. And I'm sure there are more. It's just, you know, it's hard to go over all the small little things There are undoubtedly just a ton more, in addition to just overall speed improvements. You know, like we could launch YouTube and see what's different here. I didn't tap them at the same time. Let's try that again. Come on. Oh yes, so I should have talked about the landscape view of the browser. So previously when you went into landscape view, you basically lost the URL bar. So you can see it's gone, but on Mango, the URL bar is still around. So you can see it there at the bottom. So I can actually use the phone in landscape for more than just looking at a page, but for actually interacting and entering new URLs. So I can come in here, you know, and do that, you know, and continue using the phone, you know, which works perfectly. So yeah, that stays around, which is nice, and it's still at the bottom. So previously, yeah, if you wanted to do something, you know, you're kind of out of luck. You have to go to this view, then, you know, type in the URL, and you can't really rotate into landscape. So yeah, that's pretty much the other big change. So thanks again.